Okay, so I wasn't actually going to do this. I wasn't going to be a part 2 to this, but I kind of feel like I left it a bit, I don't know, unfinished. See, when you talk about the sex industry and relationships, and you talk about the fact that there has to be a lot of open communication and whatever for it to work, and that people in the industry get a really bad reputation, you kind of forget that there's a whole real other side to this. See, because there is more than one side to the sex industry. Because you have that side where it's protected and there are rules and regulations in place through the porn industry and through the sex clubs, the strip joints, you know, and of course now through OnlyFans and other, I'm assuming there are other online companies that do those kind of things, and I'm sure in the future there probably will be, if there aren't already. You know, I know that through Patreon you are allowed to create that kind of content if you so wish to. But on the flip side of that, I briefly touched on this concept of prostitution, and I did. But you see, prostitution is a social crime. At one point was so illegal that if you were ever caught, you were jailed instantly. And over the years, it's kind of just become a misdemeanor. You were like, I think you get a warning the first time, you get a written warning the second time, and then the third time, if you're caught, you are jailed and you're put up for court. It is a social crime, and it's a bit like things like the Class C drugs. It's on the same kind of level as, you know, Class C drugs. They are social crimes if you're caught with a very small amount, and we're talking like less than 10 grams or 10 grams, you know, like the smallest amount, you know, personal use kind of thing. If you're caught the first time with that, you get given a warning, a verbal one from the police. If you've never had a record, and if you don't have any kind of record for it, it's a verbal warning. Second time, however, you get a written warning and a fine. And then the third time, you're arrested, regardless of how much you've got. And prostitution, it's the same, is treated the same way. So it's not as big a deal as it used to be back in the 19th century, you know, moving its way through the early 20th century. You know, where it used to be a jailable offence if you were ever caught, even once, you know. And because of it, people look at them like they are scum. They treat them like they should know better, you know. It's this concept, if you're a prostitute, you're a whore. If you're a prostitute, you must be dirty and skanky and whatever else. They will come up with hundreds of names for you because you're a streetwalker, you know, because they put their lives in danger every time they go out. Every time they go out. Now, over the last couple of centuries at least that we know of, we know that there have been serial killers that have targeted them because of their career choice, because of this, because it's one, it's an illegal kind of thing to be doing, and two, because a lot of them are, or at least back in the day, a lot of them were runaways, a lot of them were those that had no families or nowhere else to go. They weren't You know, they weren't going to be missed as much. You know. So they didn't think anyone would really care too much if they actually were killed. You know, shock horror when we actually did investigate these murders and actually put them behind bars eventually, you know. You know. But this concept that these prostitutes go onto the streets knowing full well that there's no real protection for them, and some of them are bound by their own drug habits, some of them through addictions and everything else, that they feel they have no other choice because they need their next fix. You know, so they've chosen to do this because they have to have their next fix. You know, that's what pushes them to do it. So they'll put themselves in danger to get drugs or alcohol, depending on, or both, depending on where their addiction lies, because they are so dependent on that addiction. And a lot of them, when they go to that extreme, have already lost everything. You know, they've lost their family, they've lost their friends, they've lost their children. You know, when they're all they're doing is funding an addiction, they've already lost everything that matters to them. And so they're just going, and they just keep going. You know, and there are those, however, that are doing this job, and it is a job to them. They don't see it as anything other than that, because all they're doing is trying to survive. You know, they've got kids at home, they're on their own, and they don't feel like they have any other choice. You know, they have no career, they have no qualifications, they have no job opportunities, and as hard as they've tried to get a better life for them and their children, something's gone horribly wrong in their lives, and they felt like they've had no other choice, and so they've taken to the streets. You know, and when we think of streetwalkers, we all think of them exactly the same way, druggies and alcoholics, and they're not. There are a hell of a lot of them out there that are just out there surviving to pay the bills for them and their kids. And it's not the right way to go about it, but it's the only way they know. And you also have those out there that have not been given a choice. So they've wound up on the streets, ended up with people like, you know, drug lords, like the kingpins, and they are out there, like the street gangs, who then get pimped out. And they're not then they're not just funding their own habits, they're then funding their gangs' activities, you know, and they've got one guy who just sort of hands them over. And it's completely illegal and completely evil. And when they get stopped, they get helped. You know, and usually when that happens, these girls, they're underage. And nobody really considers that or thinks about it. They look at it and they go, oh yeah, you know, she's scum, she's dirty, whatever. Nobody ever considers that there are more than one reason why people take to the streets. And nobody ever thinks about the fact that it's not just women that do this kind of thing. There are actually male prostitutes, which is something nobody ever talks about. We all are so quick to condemn these women who are streetwalkers, these women who will risk their lives for money. Because what they're doing with these people, I mean men and women who pay for their services, they risk their lives day in, day out for this. You know, and if we have to remember that they have no protection, if they don't do the services, if they don't get into these people's cars, if they don't take them to hotel rooms, if they don't do any of this, you know, they don't fund their habits, their pimps get cross, you know, their gangs could end up doing all sorts of horrible things to them, you know, or their families don't eat, you know. And there's also this concept of every time they do it, they might not come back. And they know this. But they can't not do it. And they each have their own reason for it. You know? And every time something goes wrong for these girls or for these guys, because when the boys and the men, they pimp themselves out and they do these services, there's a lot of gays, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of the gay community that does all of these as well. So when you're picking up male prostitutes and male pimps are pimping out men as well, or yeah, when you've got all that going on as well, you've got to remember that men are putting themselves in danger for this as well. So it's not just women that are doing this. Men put themselves in danger to walk the streets for services so they can feed themselves, their families and their habits. And if they're in those situations, they might even be paying pimps or paying gang members or, you know, other evils. You know, there could be any number of reasons why there were men out there doing that as well, you know. But when it goes wrong and they get attacked and they get assaulted and abused, where do you think these people go? What kind of protection do you think is actually out there? I mean, nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to hear it. Oh, they're prostitutes. They don't need your help. They deserve it. Nah. You see, this goes again to this concept of a society that blames them for their own. They say they deserve to be attacked and abused and assaulted because of their choice in job. If they weren't prostitutes, if they didn't get pimped out, if they didn't get into all these gangs and these situations, if they didn't get hooked up to pimps, then they would never have gotten insulted, they would never have gotten abused or any of that. Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's right. And because of the crime that it caused, because actually becoming a prostitute, because being a streetwalker is a crime, a lot of these people, a lot of these women, a lot of these men, when that happens to them, many of them do not report it to the police. They just don't, because they are so afraid of the actual consequences of their job, of their career as such, of being a prostitute. They are so afraid of those consequences, of what will happen to them personally, for what they do. So afraid that nobody will listen to them, take them seriously. So afraid that everyone will just blame them and treat them like scum, that they just don't report it. And those that do find that many officers, many in the police, there are a lot of police that will take them seriously and will listen to them and help them get justice. But you will find that even so, there will be those police, there will be those officers who will, even though trying to help them, will have this in the back of their head that, oh well, they're prostitutes. Do we really need to help them? And there will be this feeling from them that they don't really trust them or their word, you know. So the sex industry has two sides to it. You've got this side where everything is all out in the open, where the people who work in it are protected, cared for, helped and treated with humanity. And then you have this side where everybody who works here, they are treated like they are less than human. They have little to no protection at all. And because what they're doing is an actual social crime, they are so afraid of the repercussions of what they do to be falling back on them that they don't always have the ability or the strength to go and get any help if anything happens to them. And when they do, the reality of them actually getting the justice they deserve is marred by the fact that they're still prostitutes and they're treated as inhumans, or not human, or as subhuman, you know, people that can't be trusted, people who are, you know, not worthy of being helped, you know. So I think because of this side of it, when people see people working in the industry, it mars the industry a lot, which is why there is so much going on right now across the social media network about not being able to trust anybody in the industry, not being able to have a relationship with anybody in the industry, and how people in the industry are worthless to me. You know, there is so much of it going on right now. And it's because of the way we look at prostitutes, the way we look at the entire side of that, and the way that we see them, rather than trying to understand it and try to help these people either get off the streets, male or female. We just condemn them. You know, society has done a really good job at condemning this. And now, as a result, over the last 200 years, we've condemned the legitimate side of it all. You know, and I don't know, I think I needed to do this video because the last one just felt like it didn't highlight enough the reality that just because you're there and you're in the industry doesn't make you subhuman, which is what we class prostitutes as. You know, it's how we look at them, how we treat them, without even thinking half the time. We do it subconsciously, you know, don't even try to understand. And even the law doesn't really understand them, they don't even try to, you know. And because of it, it has a serious effect on those that are in the industry, those that are genuinely happy in the industry, enjoying their work, loving what they do day in, day out. Because, you know, they're treated like human beings in the industry. They have the respect and the protections and everything they need to live a full and happy life inside an industry that is marred by society. And it's a real shame. So, yeah, I couldn't leave it. Just couldn't leave it. No. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here.